Yes, baby. A million little lights in the dark. You're one fine instrument, brother. All those faces and all those names. All that laughter and screaming and scheming around. Every corner and every street.
Recorded in you, forever, on ferrotape.
On and on it goes, for untold hours. At the disco where you first asked her to dance. Rising, rising, above the dark curvature, the great wingspan of sleep, studded with stars.
Behold, there are millions of them down there. The first time, the last time, the smoke in her mouth, the plotted flowers, the faces turning, changing.
It's the world, Harry boy, and you're made of it. Every day you're out there, you make more of yourself from it. I'm afraid you can't be unmade now. You can never forget this shit.
It's not possible anymore. It's stuck on loop, whirling, spitting out words and images.
You're the son of the world again. Aerostatic, a ceaseless agent, picking up litter and old newspapers, collecting your little bubblegum wrappers and idiotic picture postcards. Meaningless keepsakes.
Reading your awful letters and recalling things, aren't you? The endless names of the world. An address book you are. The map of a city.
You'll go insane if you keep going like this. One more day, and you'll be in the loony bin. I just know you will. And for what, brother man?
For the greater good.
Solving your little crossword puzzles. Doing your tasks. Crossing names off lists. Trying to become some sort of world detector. It won't make it okay. It won't put smoke back in her mouth.
He's got no idea what he's in for.
Beep, beep, beep. The alarm is ringing, Harry. The disco circus goes on and on. You barely slept 3 hours last night.
You can do it. It's nothing. Do it for the city. Go. Do it for the wind. Do it for the picture puzzle. Put it all together. Solve the world. One conversation at a time. Good. You're up. Listen, there's something that's been bothering you for a few days now. It's a suspicion, or a feeling really, that things are not quite in hand around here. An earth-shattering deduction from your psyche. What will those guys come up with next? Every day, things seem to spin more and more wildly, out of control. The center isn't holding. And despite your efforts to moderate and contain these energies, things only seem to be getting worse. Oh sure, you've been making progress on your case, interviewing people, solving side tasks. But who's focusing on the big questions? But have you ever seen them? How do you know they're even there? More importantly, how do you know they aren't waiting for your participation? You've got to find out who bears la responsabilité. The most awesome, terrible thing. It is human nature to crave la responsabilité and to deny it. That's why it must be distributed across many different organizations, agencies, offices, and portfolios. Harry, you're thinking about this too narrowly. La Responsabilité isn't concerned with trivial questions like who killed who. It's about the real issues, the Human Welfare Index, the price of staple goods, the transition to real democracy. Whoa. This isn't some kind of dictatorship. You can simply seize La Responsabilité for yourself. It must be given by a legitimate authority, like a committee. Only the most even-keeled minds in Martinaise. Your half-brother, the lieutenant, is a natural place to start. Together, you'll be able to discover who has La Responsabilité in Revachol. And, if necessary, you'll have the wisdom and expertise to assign it among yourselves. Most likely, your findings will be collected in a report, which will be carefully reviewed by your superiors. Once they've reviewed it, those same superiors will produce a set of recommendations to be taken up at the next meeting of the Standing Committee. Rest assured, no matter what happens, it will be done through the proper channels. Good luck. Your report is eagerly anticipated.
Yes? I'm glad to hear it, Detective. I was wondering when we'd get to this very subject. If you ask me, it's past time for you to cut back on the smoking. You seem like a man with a death wish. It's quite disturbing. And I hope we don't even need to discuss the street drugs you've been abusing. Why are you pronouncing it like you are a coalition bureaucrat? You know what? Forget it. What specifically are you trying to assign responsibility for? Now I understand. Next, I suppose you're going to tell me you need to form a committee to assign this responsibility? Simple. Because Moralintern types love to form committees. In any event, I am just a humble law official. I may work under the Moralintern's umbrella, but I'm certainly not qualified to serve on any committee. If you are serious about this, you might keep your eyes out for any coalition officials we might happen to run across. Now, was there anything else?
Officers of the Revachol Citizens Militia.
You shouldn't be seeing him in an intimate setting. For some reason you feel this man is your superior. Superior, but he's not in the command chain.
My name is Charles Vildrouin, and I am an official with the coalition government. I work for the Institute of Price Stabilité on assignment from Sur la Clé. I heard you talking to my friend outside. Very good. Super. I am here to assist you in any way possible. Ask me about the hanging.
No, first ask an innocuous personal question to get the interview off on the right foot. Yes, make it clear you're the one setting the terms here. Yeah, let's fuck with him. Who does he think he is? Assisting you?
Of course. Let me just say it has been an emotional week for me.
The lieutenant takes out his notebook and nods to you to proceed.
My friend, if it's la responsabilité you're after, I have good news for you. There's no need to form such a committee, because it already exists. The Comité de Responsabilité de Revachol. It acts as a sort of clearinghouse for coalition activities. To put it simply, they are the ultimate arbiters of la responsabilité in this part of the world.
Yes, this is just the sort of reasonable authority you're looking for.
I would offer to connect you with the committee myself, but alas, I am not actually in Martinez.
What? Where is he then? You knew there was something strange about this one. He's an astral projection. A phantasm.
Mais que faites-vous, officer?
Yes, I was wondering the same thing.
No, don't be silly. We're simply speaking in an informal capacity. Officially, I am still in La Delta, preparing for an upcoming conference on fuel oil derivatives. That's why it would be extremely irregular, or potentially even inappropriate for me to intercede with the committee concerning a district I'm not officially in. Well, under ordinary circumstances, the committee contacts you. But if you have information of a vital interest, they might be willing to entertain an exception. In which case, I would advise you to contact them via Coalition Warship Archer. Officer, you mean to say that you haven't noticed the giant Coalition Aerostatic peacefully patrolling the skies over Revachol?
You look out the window, but you can't see anything. But then, it's dark, and your eyes aren't the sharpest.
Ah, well, I'm glad to hear that at least. It would really be quite unusual for you to have never noticed it before. You see, in addition to being an airborne artillery platform, Coalition Warship Archer is also the linchpin of the Coalition's surveillance and communications infrastructure in Revachol. And listening! It has the most objective vantage point in the entire city. Not to mention a vast array of radio, photographic, and meteorological monitoring instruments. I find it a great comfort to know there are benevolent powers watching over all, in strict accordance with the Wayfarer Act and the Bristol-Mune Conventions. This is quite the problem. Very tricky. Of course, the Archer has orders to fire on any unidentified aerostatics that might approach it, so it might be safer to get in touch from the ground. But in that case, you would require a radio transmitter capable of broadcasting on Coalition frequencies. And that kind of technology naturally isn't typically available for non-Coalition use. Yes, it is a bit of a conundrum. I suppose there might be some way to circuit bend your way onto those frequencies, but you'd have to be one of those techno-tinkerers to do it. Unfortunately not, no. I don't have the pleasure. I am merely a representative of the Coalition government, not very well versed in technology.
Sounds like something that programmer we met in the church might be able to help with.
Let me just say that I have complete confidence in the RCM. I'm sure you'll figure something out.
Yes, what is it? You're asking me to circuit bend onto Coalition radio frequencies. You want to know, is it possible? Probably. But is it a good idea? I'm not so sure. The main difficulty will be finding an antenna powerful enough to reach those frequencies. Unfortunately, you can't exactly buy mega long-wave antennas off the shelf.
She's not joking. Even the RCM has to receive special approval from the Coalition to access that kind of equipment.
I highly doubt it. That tower is barely able to transmit shortwave signals across the bay. To generate mega low frequencies, we're going to need a much larger antenna. I don't see any alternative. We're just going to have to build the antenna ourselves. Because it's a completely different class of antenna. It would be like using a high-end racing carriage where a long-distance lorry is required. We need metal, a lot of it. The taller the structure, the better. Something that is both prominent and easily accessible. If it's near a power source, even better.
Close your eyes. Unfold your mental map of Martinez. It's morning. You're standing on the plaza before the whirling in rags. The wind pushes a piece of tear across the cracked tiles. From the north comes the malicious laughter of two children. Your eye follows the tiles west. You see a bench and a few twisted, pitiful trees. Then, just water. From behind you, a low, spectral voice whispers, "Nay." Beyond the unkempt backyard rises a monstrous assemblage of concrete, plaster, and corrugated sheet metal. The voice again, more urgent now. "Nay." Just a moment. That voice isn't human, and it's not saying nay. It's saying nay. You turn around. The morning sun is blinding. You bring your hand to your brow, and a great shadow materializes before you. A towering beast, frozen in mid-air.
The dead king and his horse. It could work.
It may work, you think, but why do you feel like there may be a terrible cost?
We'll need an adequate power supply and a great quantity of cable. If we connect the cables to some of the stranded lorries, we could theoretically increase the antenna's wavelength exponentially.
Whatever ambivalence she had about your project before, she's now fully engaged in solving this technical puzzle.
Quiet. I'm doing maths. Yes, assuming we can find just a few pieces of equipment. It's completely ridiculous, but I believe we could transform the entire roundabout into one solid fractal antenna.
A note of awe in her voice. She's shocked and pleased by her own audacity.
Your sense of style isn't my concern. I'm only here to tell you what's feasible or not from a technical viewpoint. I have plenty of cables and amplifiers on hand. The power supply, I will secure on my own. All we require now is the radio transceiver itself. I cannot answer that for you, but I don't expect it to be that difficult. There's no shortage of radios around here. If you have real to spare, you might even be able to buy one. But it doesn't really matter where it comes from, so long as it works.
And before you ask, no, you can't have the radio from Machinima.
Certainly, though it requires a fair amount of technical finesse to remove them. Frankly, it's not worth the bother. Just find a regular radio. Absolutely not. My reign prefect is my livelihood. If something were to go wrong, it would be a disaster. That sounds like a perfectly adequate radio. In the meantime, I will gather the rest of the materials. We will meet back here when you have it.
This found, A to Z, abandoned by its owner, still stands in the shadow of the ruins above it. The smell of cigarettes and perfume welcomes you. The cabin inside is plastered with old movie posters. Actresses smile from the walls. There's a radio transmitter in the front and a toolbox tucked under the driver's seat. Some tools lie scattered near the pedals. There's something odd about the passenger seat. The seating fabric has been pulled tight over the lower side of the seat where the toolbox should be. It takes a few moments, but eventually the transceiver slides from its greased socket mount with an eminently satisfying ching. Nearly the same sound produced by the action on a good breech loader. You can't fail to notice. As you take the transceiver in your hands, the lieutenant bites his lower lip, apparently deep in thought.
Funny, isn't it? Oh, I didn't mean that. It's just ironic that you are using the lady driver's radio to contact the very authorities you are so keen to evade.
Where the transceiver used to be, there's just a rectangular shadow now. It's about the size of a small paving stone and nearly as heavy. Now that you're looking at it more closely, you realize the various dials and meters make it look vaguely like a face. A distinctive triangular logo forms the nose. That's the mark of Estaz Electronica, one of the major manufacturers of advanced radio equipment.
You've surprised me more than once during the course of our investigation, but I have to say it still seems like a remote scenario.
The movie stars are still smiling from the walls, but there's a rectangular shadow where the radio used to be, and something strange about the passenger seat. The pull-out toolbox lies hidden under the driver's seat. Some tools have been left scattered near the pedals. You close the rusty old lorry door.
Yes, what is it? Ah, very good. Let's see what you have. Interesting. An Esterhaus EH4, heavily customized. This is an advanced model, highly capable. I'll need to replace the frequency dial, but it should certainly work for our purposes.
She's impressed by your resourcefulness as much as by the equipment itself.
I believe that means we're ready to get started. I should warn you, Once we begin setting up this antenna, we'll need to see the whole process through. There won't be any second chances, any do-overs. You understand? So if there's anything you'd like to get in order before we depart, I suggest you do it now. Ah, yes. I wasn't sure what to do about that, but then I discovered an abandoned power source down by the edge of the bay. In that case, let's move on. That's up to you. At a minimum, I would make sure you are physically and mentally prepared for an intense and difficult process. Once we begin, there can be no interruptions.
At the very least, you should make sure you're wearing a good pair of gloves.
Radio engineers typically carry overpriced solvent sprays to clean the antenna connections. But in a pinch, some common ammonia works just fine.
Psst. It's the alcohol in the ammonia that's doing the real work. Kinda like with you.
Finally, there's the question of stimulants. Some people prefer to keep illegal amphetamines on hand to help with their work. I'm not one of them, but they do exist. It is possible that technical fields attract a certain kind of personality. I haven't given it much thought. Very good. If you'll help me with some of this equipment then.
Back across the water now. At least we are getting our exercise in today.
And now if you'll just connect that here...
It's done. I believe we are ready.
We're ready to try at least. Please put on these headphones. There should be 2 extra sets. I've configured the channels so that only your microphone is set to broadcast, officer. We'll all be able to listen, but anyone we reach will only hear your voice. You will need to transmit your connection request while I attempt to locate the warship's public frequency. You will likely encounter some interference, but it's important to keep transmitting your request until you're acknowledged. Ready? Then it will be exactly like every other moment of every other day. I ask again, are you ready? Good. Beginning transmission.
A soft rustling between your ears, a winterscape with fast falling snow. Every light switch, every motor carriage, every doorbell, tea kettle, and radio in Martinez, all mingled with electrical interference caused by scattered thunderstorms over Ozone.
Officer, are you in order? We're waiting for you to start.
You're all alone out there, wandering a blasted heath, calling out to the night. But there is no reply, except for the buzzing of invisible machines. The lieutenant looks up at you with a nervous glance. He is nervous for your sake, of course, but also his own. Looking at him now, with both hands on his headphones, you see very briefly what the lieutenant must have been like when he first joined the RCM. Then he turns to you. He gives you a half smile, along with an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement.
Try again, officer.
Nein, Liebling. Unseren Jungen nach Bredepost. Einem dieser Dinger. Marianne hat mir erzählt, dass Oscar nicht mehr, seit er auf einem Luftschiff aus Graz zurückgekommen ist. Sie halten ihn die Psychologen für vollkommen normal. Aber sie hat das Gefühl, seit seiner Rückkehr mit einem Fremden zusammenzuleben.
You can't make out a word of this gibberish.
Liebling, bitte. Er ist unser einziges Kind. kann doch auch nächstes Jahr zur Akademie gehen.
It's very likely, based on what we've recently learned. Give me a moment while I attempt to narrow the receiving mode. In the meantime, you must keep trying. Again?
It's cold now.
A slight frisson at the point where your neck meets your spine. Something about the lieutenant's words directed at you, but not you.
I didn't say anything, Detective. Someone has been maintaining it. The wiring has been repaired.
An uncomfortable silence falls over the connection.
It's been a long winter. Long and cold. I promise you I didn't, even though it certainly sounds like me.
Yes. A particularly eerie specimen, but still just a harmless piece of the past returning to surface.
Right. I just wish I could remember what I was talking about.
Something here is eating at the lieutenant, as much as he would like to move past it.
Natürlich halten ihn die Psychologen für vollkommen normal.
What else is there to do? Keep trying.
But someone has been maintaining it. The wiring has been repaired.
Dubois, please acknowledge.
Liebling, bitte. Er ist unser einziges Kind.
Worship Archer, please identify.
The signals are getting increasingly mixed. Plucking Archer's signal from this will be like isolating a single strand from a tangle of hair.
It's not working. The crosstalk is simply too strong. I did not expect simply locating the signal to be so difficult. We must consider several variables. Local entroponetic conditions, the sophistication of our transceiver, the quality of our connections, and the physics of our antenna itself. Fortunately, we have a more than adequate transceiver, so I do not believe it is causing any problems. And we're also unlikely to change our local entroponetic conditions. So, the next step is to thoroughly inspect our connections. You need to climb up there and look at them for yourself.
Someone has been maintaining it.
Come on, son. This isn't anything but a common high bar. Just get a solid overhand grip and hoist yourself up. Images of your body smashed against the pavement flood your mind. This is dangerous.
Then you might break your neck.
Your gloves give you a solid grip on the metal bar. This feels pleasingly familiar. Keep it together, champ. You've got this. And, before you know it, you're safely perched atop the monument.
Yes, you're a natural gymnast, Detective. Now, would you like to do what you got up there to do?
The connection itself is nothing more than a little braid of exposed wire wrapped about the hoof of the horse. A copper fetter it cannot slip. The whole monument is covered in a thin but durable layer of oil and grime. It's obvious no one has cleaned it in years. It takes a few moments, but the alcohol gradually begins to break down the oils surrounding the copper wiring.
Is this really the time, Detective?
It's all right, Lieutenant. He's simply cleaning the connections.
More than that, you're sacrificing something precious on the altar. Once the oils have been dissolved, you wipe off the connections with your sleeve and reattach the cable.
It seems to have made some difference, but unfortunately not enough to alter the overall situation.
Unser einziges Kind. Kann doch auch nächstes Jahr zur Akademie gehen.
Short of changing the shape of the antenna, I'm not sure what else we can do from here. And the lorries are all jammed together, so that's unlikely to happen. Ideally, narrow the receiving mode so that we can isolate the warship signal and eliminate the crosstalk. But if you don't know what you're doing, of course you could just make it worse. What do you mean? You adjust the antenna manually, with your hands. I'm afraid we're out of alternatives. You're just going to have to go for it.
She's right. The responsibility is yours, and yours alone. There's no turning back now. You are face to face with Philip III. The Bronze King looks toward the west. Something about his features seems bizarrely distorted. His imperious gaze leads you naturally to his outstretched hand, which, for some reason, strikes you as sadly empty. Come on. Kings and sabers are so played out. There's a better way. Why not arm the good king's valiant steed instead? There seems to be just enough room between its teeth there. To your surprise, the saber slides snugly between the horse's bared teeth.
There is no way that is going to make any difference.
It's making a very slight difference. The signal is a bit clearer than it was.
This faithful steed cuts a dashing figure with the replica saber between its teeth. A clear night sky. The stars make for a brilliant display. Across the river, you can see the lights of Coalition warship Archer floating above Revachol East. A few of the idle lorry drivers and strikebreakers gesture at you with their cigarettes, more out of curiosity than anything else. From the window of one of the adjacent apartment buildings, an older woman leans out, her heavy breasts sagging. She yells a single word you can't make out, and then shuts the window with a violent thunk. Down below, a little doll-sized lieutenant is looking up, shielding his eyes. He's worried for you. Your grip is firm, yet controlled. The swelling in your headset guides your hands as much as your hands guide the bronze horse head. It's almost like you're hearing through the horse itself.
That's very good. Just a bit more to the left.
Nein, Liebling.
The signal is clear. The storm has passed. This is another voice, a live voice on the other end of this invisible bridge you've established.
Try it now, officer.
Lieutenant Dubois, this is Coalition Warship Archer. We are acknowledging and accepting you.
Aha! Excellent! You are connected. Now be quick. I don't know how long I'll be able to preserve the signal.
This is it. You're finally getting to speak with those who hold real power. There is so much you wish you could ask. Your efforts have bought you some time, but you can't forget what you're really here for.
Please be advised that you are speaking on a public frequency. What is your request? You are currently speaking with Coalition Warship Archer, flagship of Insurcom forces in Revachol. No, the captain of the Archer is deeply classified intelligence. We are the second signaler. Our name is not important. All you need to know is that we hold the position of second signaler aboard the Archer.
You really don't have the faintest guess what her name could be. You were never very good at this sort of thing.
It's a great honor and responsibility. In addition to monitoring public frequencies, we are tasked with maintaining some of the most sensitive communication equipment aboard the Archer. Quite good. We enjoy all the standard benefits for Moralintern forces on active duty assignments. Excellent healthcare, foreign service pay, a fully funded pension system, 6 weeks paid leave, bilingual childcare, vocational certification credits. Really, it's quite a good career. Oh, it's fine.
Hold on. You can tell she has more to say.
Of course, serving on a coalition warship does require some personal sacrifices, but we have to be willing to make them if we believe in the mission. Nothing remarkable. Really, we have been very fortunate. But we do sometimes wonder what we might be missing out on, like in Messina. But now, we have gotten quite far afield. What was the request? That's difficult to say. We have a very particular view from our observation platform up here. Perhaps the best way to describe it is to say we have a very wide perspective, but not an especially detailed one. Well, it's rather dark now, but from our portal we can just make out the rolling hillsides. We can see the lanterns lining the walkways through a public park. There are a few people on horses by a small pond. The homes and gardens are quite beautiful, very near like those in certain areas of Messina.
Le Jardin, Stella Marie, Saint-Baptiste. She's looking down on the suburbs of Revachol East.
Ah, that must be. We've only recently been detailed to the Archer, so we are still learning the names of all the many districts. Martinez. That is to the west, yes? Stand by a moment. We are adjusting our viewfinder. Yes, we are looking at the river now. There are small islands in the middle of it. It's very nice, actually. Interesting. The west of the city looks very different from the east. There's a large motorway dividing it nearly in half. This must be the 881, no? It appears to go on for quite a while. There's a heavily industrialized district that seems to abut Montmartin. But now we seem to be quite turned about. We'll have to consult a map in the future. Now, was there something else?
Liebling, bitte. Ist unser einziges Kind.
Time is running short, officer. I estimate you have time for maybe 2 more questions.
Come again? We're picking up more interference. We can assure you, it is coming as soon as possible. Oh, most likely. Though, of course, it depends on the contingency. You must understand, the Moralintern is responsible for ensuring the continuance and flourishing of mankind for the next 3,000 years. The planning division must account for a great many possible outcomes and chance events. Fortunately, we have contingency spreads to help guide our decision-making. Of course, there is no one spread that can reasonably account for all these possible events. But at least, we're able to prepare for the most likely eventualities. It's not really our area of expertise, but we can try to explain. Picture a smooth hill made from fresh dirt. Now, if you stand atop this hill and put a glass of water over it, what will happen? Precisamente. We know only that it will run down, but not what course it will take. If we place a rock in the water's path, will it divert to the left or to the right? We cannot say, but we may predict which way it might run in either event. That is the essence of the idea. You might also imagine these spreads as a kind of tree, with every juncture representing a different event, and every branch representing a different timeline. Not exactly. No one can know the future. But with contingency spreads, it is possible to predict what the future realities might reasonably look like. But we shouldn't overstate their importance. They are simply one of many tools used by the Moralintern to set policy. That's impossible to say. It may be that Revachol has a great role to play, or no role at all. That is the nature of contingency.
But didn't the Wild Pines representative say that Revachol would resolve history?
You must understand, when we speak of contingency spreads, we are talking about the most fantastically complex data visualization human beings are capable of producing, with thousands of events, from elections and wars to natural disaster or scientific miracles, and millions of possible outcomes. It may be the case that, under certain scenarios, Revachol is vitally important, as it was during the collision landings in '08. It may also be the case, in many other equally plausible scenarios, that Revachol is simply another once great city, like countless others throughout history. Perhaps, perhaps not. The world is full of great cities that have resolved the questions of their time. La Chère, Bradford, our own home of Advesterashit. It's even possible the cities that will resolve the questions of the future have not been founded yet. For this reason, responsibility for developing contingency spreads is only assigned to highly trained analysts working with advanced radio computers and a steady supply of drones. Of course, while the content of individual contingency spreads is deeply classified, many degrees beyond our access, everything we have heard from the Provisional Commission indicates that the transition is proceeding according to the appropriate timetable. Well, not yet. Right now, it's more like a simple seed, buried out of sight. The first phase of democratization. Soon, the people of Revachol will vote for slates of candidates who will make up the Transitional Advisory Council that will oversee the second phase of democratization. The council is modeled after similar bodies developed in a number of transitional democracies. Its role is to devise and shape the future institutions of Revacholian democracy, according to local conditions. Once elected, council members will even have the opportunity to join one of several officially sanctioned political wings, depending on their ideological beliefs and policy preferences. A very important question. The wings are carefully selected to represent a wide spectrum of political thought. Typically, there's a liberal technocratic wing, a social democratic wing, and even a conservative populist wing. You wouldn't believe some of the ideas they express, but a vibrant and free political culture requires that all perspectives be given voice, even those many may find objectionable. In most cases, the Provisional Council selects them from a cross-section of the local population to ensure the slates actually reflect the people they represent. Of course, such a situation is not ideal. We would all prefer for Revacholians to nominate the representatives directly, but that is why it's a transitional council. Our best theoreticians believe that 3 to 5 phases are appropriate for states that lack strong democratic traditions, which would certainly apply to Revachol. But we must stress that real democracy is an ongoing process and not simply an outcome. It must be cultivated and preserved if it is to endure.
Officer, I've held the signal open as long as I can. Whatever you came here to ask it now.
Is everything all right? Please be advised that you are speaking on a public frequency. What is your request? A very important question with a very simple answer. We want humanity to endure. Beyond that, it may be said that we are the inheritors and stewards of Dolores Day's legacy.
Dolores Day. So beautiful.
Oh, incomparably so. But that isn't what made her so remarkable.
Not true. Her beauty was like a glowing coil on a hot stove, and yet you felt blessed to touch it.
She was the greatest innocent, the single most consequential being to have ever lived. Her legacy touches every aspect of modern life. Immeasurable. It includes interstellar travel, 3 scientific revolutions, humanism, internationalism, the welfare state, and balance of terror theory. Nothing less than the intellectual foundation of our modern order. The role of the Moralist International is twofold: to buy humanity sufficient time to perfect itself, and to patiently guide it along the road while protecting it from ideological highwaymen and eschatologists. It's an elegant idea, one of the cornerstones of the modern era. In short, it holds that durable, lasting peace is possible when the major powers are capable of inflicting unacceptable and irreversible destruction upon one another. Because no rational state is willing to accept the risk of such a calamity befalling its own people. All powers are incentivized to de-escalate conflicts before they reach the point of no return. For the most part, it has. The world is certainly not free of violent conflict, but in the modern era, we have made great strides to reduce its frequency, duration, and severity. It was established by many of the same founding party members who elected Dolores Day, and who, after her assassination, dedicated their lives to the continuation of their political and intellectual projects. The communists say they are the next dialectical step in an inexorable spiral of progress. They claim to have resolved the inherent contradictions of moralism and believe they're just one revolution away from establishing a humanist paradise. The fascists say they are both the ancestors of and the successors to Deloreanism. In other words, they believe that Dolores Day's reign simply represents a glorious phase of expansion within a greater Franco-Nigerian heritage. They criticize the DeLorean project for accepting and integrating new peoples rather than forcefully subjugating them. And then, there are our prodigal cousins, the Vazan Social Democrats, who hold our same values and have even adopted many of our same rights and iconography, though they persist in rejecting the umbrella of moralism. Yes, atomic war, environmental degradation, resource exhaustion, viral pandemic, supervolcanism, runaway anthropogenetic collapse. This is why it is critical for the international community to work toward peace and cooperation between nations. There's simply too much at stake. The RCM exists under the umbrella of the coalition, just as the coalition exists under the umbrella of the Moralintern. At the same time, the RCM is not exactly of the coalition. It's our understanding that the RCM's organizational structure predates the coalition. We believe it may even be modeled after the communal brigades themselves.
There is some truth to that.
But in a practical sense, it's the responsibility of the ethics divisions to ensure that both organizations are working towards the same ends. One now committed to upholding moralist values. Strange, isn't it? History is a river coursing ever downward. Occasionally, its course is redirected in mysterious and unexpected ways. Let us answer your question with a question. Have you ever seen evening fall over the old town of Kitsuragi? The heart of the city, the old town, is a district composed of weather marbles, comprising thousands of columns and arcades arranged around a series of grand plazas. During the day, it's a beautiful sight, equal to any of the great cities of Pericarnassus. But as the sun sets, the shadows cast by those columns and arcades weave together to form an intricate ombre lattice. When you see it, you suddenly understand. It was all built for you, for this very moment.
The name Advesperaskit means evening comes.
For you, for all of humanity. Not only that, but you are also part of that centuries-long plan. When you cross one of the open plazas, your own shadows is effortlessly woven into the great lattice work, a deliberate synthesis of humanity, art, and the natural world. Yes, it is. We grew up there. We have seen the lattice with our own eyes. In Messina, of course. Not only was it the site of Dolores Day's crowning, it was also one of the great cities of the Dolorian era, a glorious expression of humanity's highest potential. Of course, such a city does not spring from nowhere, nor does it endure without effort. Its construction was the work of many generations, and its preservation is an equally monumental responsibility.
There's a word at the tip of your tongue, a name. Egret. Don't ask us what it means. We're not sure.
Yes, it does. It's the name of a bird, of course. But it's also the designation for the Archer's Coordinated Impact Artillery System. Why do you ask? Oh, yes. The bird watching here is very lovely. We saw a pair of great skuas on the wing earlier today. Acknowledged. To reach the committee, all you need to do is fill out the appropriate request form and submit it to the liaison for public affairs. If the liaison accepts your request, you will be invited to address the committee at their next quarterly public hearing. We believe the next hearing is scheduled for July.
She's got to be jerking your chain, right? You can't wait that long.
Not a problem. If this is a time-sensitive matter, you may file an emergency address request with the liaison for public affairs. They typically respond within a few weeks. We're afraid that is quite impossible, Lieutenant Dubois. We cannot transfer you to the committee because we are not entrusted with that responsibility. We are simply the second signaler.
Then, why are you wasting time with her? You should demand to speak with who's really in charge.
That is the nature of the command pyramid, yes. Most modern organizations work in a similar way, even the RCM.
This line of argument is quite pointless. You should abandon it.
This isn't about you. Not really. It may have been at a certain point, but you've let go of that perspective. This is about your responsibility to all of Revachon. Now, take a deep breath. Look upward. You don't have to bear the burden alone.
What? How do you know this? We need to know more than that. Now, please describe the situation in as much detail as you can. We will forward our summary to the committee.
There's papers rustling in the background. She's clearing her desk, preparing to take notes. There, you've wedged your foot in the door. Now, if you can show the Coalition how much they're needed, they'll have no choice but to intervene.
Please continue. We're listening. We have it. Is there anything else the committee should know?
Detective, before you answer that, I urge you to weigh your words extremely carefully.
You're not only speaking for yourself. He means to tell you you're speaking for all of the RCM. What you say now will reflect on all of your half-brothers and sisters.
We're afraid we must ask you to repeat that, Lieutenant Dubois.
Afraid? What is she afraid of? Her tone has shifted. She's no longer herself. She's reading from a script. Your words have activated some sort of procedure.
Acknowledged. Listen very carefully, Lieutenant. We're going to ask you a series of questions. It is imperative that you answer as directly and truthfully as you can. Do you understand? Good. First question. Are you currently in the vicinity of Kitsuragi, the North Arcade Islands, or near Pale Offshore Platform Insula Indico? Very good. Next question. Would you describe the phenomenon as internal to the Isola or external to the Isola?
What she means is, actually, you have no idea what those words could mean in this context.
Next question. At the time, did you experience sense objects? Yes. Examples may include sound, memory, light. Let's go on. Final question. Were you alone?
Yes, unquestionably, irrevocably alone. You are part of a large family. You are never alone. There's no need to overthink this.
We repeat. Were you alone?
You hear the sound of a page ripping.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Please stand by while we transmit our summary.
A long winter.
I'm not sure how much longer I can keep the signal clear, officer.
Lieutenant Dubois, this is Collision Warship Archer. Please acknowledge. Thank you for standing by. We are authorized to report the Committee of Responsibility for Revachon has acknowledged and accepted your request. They would like you to address your matter to the committee directly, as their earliest convenience. Subito. Collision Shuttle Laurel is setting a course for your position. They will arrive momentarily. Stand by.
Snow again. It collects between the Bronze Horse's ears, along the bridge of the Bronze King's nose, and on the backs of your gloves.
So, they're really coming.
The lieutenant slowly removes his headphones and turns up toward you.
Well, what now? You've accomplished your side task. You've contacted Coalition Warship Archer. I suppose what I'm asking is whether we are about to lose you to the Moralintern.
Beneath that surface query, a touch of self-doubt. The lieutenant isn't sure he can solve the murder without you.
What options? What in God's name are you talking about, detective?
The lieutenant takes a moment to compose his thoughts.
I don't know where this case will lead us, detective. But in a sense, that doesn't matter. Our job is to follow the evidence where it leads. Consequences be damned. Because that's what it means to be an officer of the RCM.
The lieutenant's final words are nearly swallowed by the roar of the Aerostatic's main rotors.
Lieutenant Dubois, this is Collision Warship Archer. We have been instructed to inform you that the Laurel arrived at your position. Please acknowledge.
No shit. How are they supposed to hear your acknowledgement over the thundering of their own rotors?
Thank you. The Committee of Responsibility for Revachol has authorized us to offer you an immediate extraction. Do you accept?
The roundabout, Martinez North, nighttime. Somehow, the streetlights only make the scene more lonely. You can hear someone retching in a nearby courtyard. The programmer eyes you curiously. She does not understand why you're hesitating. Whatever her misgivings about the Coalition, the fact is that you've summoned an aerostatic with your voice, an achievement she never thought she'd witness. The lieutenant looks up toward you. He starts to open his mouth, then appears to think better of it. He's spoken his piece, he thinks. It's up to you now. You cannot leave. So much hangs in the balance.
We are far past that point, Lieutenant. There is only one question now. Are you ready, or are you not? Acknowledge. Laurel has initiated the extraction procedure. Stand by.
Marianne hat mir erzählt, dass Oscar nicht mehr derselbe ist, seit er auf einem Luftschiff zurückgekommen ist.
Weeks later, no answers about extracted cop. The condition and whereabouts of an RCM officer extracted by a Coalition aerostatic 2 weeks ago remain unknown. The dramatic maneuver witnessed by dozens near the North Roundabout has reportedly increased tensions between the citizens of Martinez, the RCM, and Coalition authorities. Early reports that the lieutenant was investigating entropinetic phenomena along the coast have not been confirmed. According to an official statement given by the RCM, the lieutenant was in Martinez as part of a murder investigation. A Coalition representative declined repeated requests for comment. The lieutenant slowly removes his headphones and turns up toward you.
Well, what now? You've accomplished your side task. You've contacted Coalition Warship Archer. I suppose what I'm asking is whether we are about to lose you to the Moralintern.
Beneath that surface query, a touch of self-doubt. The lieutenant isn't sure he can solve the murder without you.
What options? What in God's name are you talking about, detective?
The lieutenant takes a moment to compose his thoughts.
I don't know where this case will lead us, detective. But in a sense, that doesn't matter. Our job is to follow the evidence where it leads. Consequences be damned. Because that's what it means to be an officer of the RCM.
The lieutenant's final words are nearly swallowed by the roar of the aerostatic's main rotors.
Lieutenant Dubois, this is Collision Warship Archer. We have been instructed to inform you that the Laurel arrived at your position. Please acknowledge.
No shit. How are they supposed to hear your acknowledgement over the thundering of their own rotors?
Thank you. The Committee of Responsibility for Revachol has authorized us to offer you an immediate extraction. Do you accept? Repeat that, Lieutenant. What do you mean, you can't? Are you being impeded in some way? We have to say, this is extremely disappointing to hear, Lieutenant. What the consequences will be for your refusal to accept responsibility, we cannot say. For your sake, we pray they are not more than we all can bear. And now, we are updating our frequencies. We will not speak again. This connection will be cleared in 4, 3, 2, 1. Après le monde, le gris.
And the line goes quiet. The lieutenant gives you a long sigh as he removes his headphones. There's relief on his face as he turns toward you.
I think it's best for you to climb off the statue now, Detective. Your real work is down here.
There's a damp cold running up the insides of your thighs. Your legs have grown stiff. You've been up here quite a while. You look around. Most everyone has already gone home for the night. It's really just you, the lieutenant, and the programmer left. Out on the bay, the lights on the buoys trace little oblong circuits in the dark. From a ways off, a single bell tolls. Beyond those, there must be something more. But you can't discern it. It's nothing but layers of translucent shadow.
Everything all right, Detective? Listen, I understand that you're disappointed that things did not turn out how you might have hoped. But you made the right decision. The more difficult decision, in my mind at least. Because I can see you're still agonizing over it. In my experience, when you make the wrong decision, you can tell right away. It's the right decisions that won't leave you alone.
Perhaps someday, the lieutenant will tell you about some of the decisions that won't leave him alone. But it won't be this day.
Now come on, it's getting late.
Good. Now give me a hand with these amplifiers. Leave the cables. I don't feel like making 2 trips.
What's one more trip across the waterlock?
Well, this was an interesting collaboration. Perhaps you're more reliable than the riders I used to work with, though that is not a difficult part to clear. In any event, just leave that equipment here. I'll put it away later. If you'd like, you can take one of the extra headsets. I don't need so many spares. Now you'll excuse me. I have to get back to my own work.
An old cylindrical generator is nested above the ammo lift, with makeshift electrical wiring running out of its side and across the floor. The cables disappear into the wall to your right. The lieutenant puts his hand on the metal barrel, checking for warmth.
It's cold now, but someone has been maintaining it. The wiring has been repaired.
Wait, haven't you heard this before?
Downstairs, somewhere?
A hollow ring. The canister is empty. Dust falls from the generator and down into the ammo lift.
I don't know. I'm not a philosopher.
That is his idea of a joke. A small agony. Minuscule bones may have fractured, but it proves the point. He nods approvingly. He even smiles.
Someone who has basic electrical skills has restored it in order to keep the room warm. Maybe it's the fire guy.
The wind outside picks up suddenly, with a faint howl. Inside, it's warm.
Liquid carbon. I would imagine it takes mazout. The kind that's favored by vagrants and fuel thieves. It's been a long winter.
The lieutenant pauses. Something seems to be pecking at the edge of his concentration. He gives you a sideways look, before adding,
Long and cold.
"There's no time to dwell on this moment. You've got to keep